hijacking. In this nugget, we take a look at hijacking. We start off with a hijacking overview, where we take a look at what really makes hijacking possible, as well as the level of involvement from the hacker in the actual hijacking session. We also take a look at the various types of hijacking, such as brute force, man in the middle. We also take a look at session hijacking, as you can see here. And this is one of the more common types of hijacking and often very successful as well. We take a look here also at some common hijacking tools, and I'll conclude with a demo of some of the tools that we can use. Alright then, as we get started talking about hacking, I actually got to show you something else first. My daughter has a bird. It's a cockatiel, and it's usually out near the kitchen, but it was squawking because it wanted somebody to keep it company. I guess it gets kind of lonely cooped up in the cage over there. So I decided to bring it into my office and perch it up on top of my monitor, and there's the bird right there. In fact, I don't really ever have much to do with this bird, but he seems to be very happy on that monitor. Maybe that's because it's kind of helping keep him warm or something like that. I don't even know this bird's name. We've had it for years, and I don't even know the bird's name. I just call it Bird. Anyway, enough of that. Here we go into hijacking. Now, when it comes to hijacking, what is the key weakness or the key capability that makes this possible? Primarily, it revolves around predictable sequence numbers, at least when it comes to TCP hijacking, that allow some kind of an interception. Now, this is something that we've already seen in different kinds of ways. For example, in denial of service attacks, when we looked at denial of service a couple of nuggets ago, and a couple of times throughout this series, I've mentioned something about these sequence numbers and the fact that you can exploit them. Well, hijacking is part of that. Once you have made a hijack attempt successful, you can have a choice of different types of hijacking. One of those would be an active hijack, and that would be where we replace the original host. So maybe this is the original host right here. I'm just going to draw circles to make it easy. This is the hacker right here, and then this is the target, maybe a server over here. Well, we want to intercept any communications that are taking place here and impersonate this person. But in order to do that, if we interrupt this stream and we're able to get the data out of it, then we can continue our own communication with the server, but we have to take this server offline somehow, or this host offline somehow. Otherwise, there'll be a lot of conflicting messages, and it'll become quickly apparent that there are two people identifying themselves as the same computer on the network. So that's when you have to replace the original host. This can be kind of disruptive and obvious, especially if someone's seated at that local computer because all of a sudden nothing's working, or they can't get on the internet, or something like this. There's also passive hijacking. This is where we're going to, let me just kind of clean up all of this a little bit here. Oops, that's not going to work, is it? There's also passive hijacking. Now, with passive hijacking, similar kinds of things happen. So you're going to route through the attacker. Okay, so you're going to route traffic through the attacker. We're going to actually demonstrate that towards the end of this nugget when I do a demonstration of SSL strip, for example, or maybe some other things. But I'm going to intercept that traffic, and I might not even touch it. I might not even do anything with it. I might just be observing, might be looking for passwords, stuff like this. So I want to just sniff that traffic. While I'm doing that, I can use other utilities such as dsniff or ettercap, and those will intercept passwords and make them quite easy, and I don't even have to comb through all of the packets that I might have to do if I was just using a capture tool such as Wireshark. Also, I can just monitor what's going on there, what kind of traffic they're using, and so on. And then there's a hybrid attack. This is going to be where, yeah, it's passive, and I'm doing all this stuff I said earlier. I'm just kind of sniffing around until something interesting is found, like maybe I find some logon credentials. Well, at that point, I want to log on as that user, and I can't have them logging on at the same time in some instances, so I might need to bring them down. I'd go back into an active method at that point. So there's a lot of different vectors that you can go with through all of these. Now, here's the key thing about hijacking as well. I don't care what your patch level is. It does not directly address this issue. The whole reason why this is available for us is because of the sequence numbers of TCP/IP and some other weaknesses that are within web browsers, and some assumptions that are made with security, even with SSL. Okay, so it doesn't really matter what your patch level is. Many of these tools that I'm going to show you, you can still exploit even with up-to-date clients. Also, this occurs, and this is just something you should know about, this occurs in the transport layer of the OSI model. I think that's kind of just an academic statement, but trust me, you probably need to know about that. So when we talk about the OSI model we discussed way early in this whole series, remember that does take place in the transport layer. And then continuing with some other academics here, we have to identify certain hijacking types. Now again, I don't think it's really important what the label is that you attach to the type of a hijack attempt you're doing. If I could do a hijack and be totally ignorant of all the different terms and still be successful with the hijack. But anyway, just for our purposes and for purposes of the Certified Ethical Hacker, do know what brute forcing is. This is where you have a session ID that goes on. This is not the same as a sequence number that takes place in TCP. Okay, a session ID would be just that. When I establish a connection with, let's say, a website that I may have, maybe I even have to log on to, well, there's a specific and unique session number that is assigned to that session. Okay, for most kinds of logon attempts, those session IDs are going to take place in the clear unless you're using SSL. So what this means is a lot of the websites out there, when you log on, it'll have a session ID in the URL. If you look up at the browser at the top, you'll see there's even a session ID number there. Well, I could do this. If I'm not sure what my victim's session ID is, I could do multiple session IDs. I might do a sequence. I might do session IDs that are maybe in a family of numbers that I know this vendor uses for this website, or some things that I've sniffed out earlier. So I might not know their exact session ID right now, but I might just start planting a bunch of them in a URL, and you can do this programmatically or in a script, and just keep trying until one of them is successful. One of the things that makes this more successful as well is that there's an indefinite expiration. It's not as if the session IDs that I try are only going to be good for the next 5 minutes or something like that. So that's a big item right there, and that's of course not very secure. Anything that's susceptible to brute forcing is probably not going to be something that's highly secure, like online banking or going to look at your investment accounts or something like this. Also, though, there's no lockout for a lot of these. So you can do multiple thousands of attempts at trying to brute force a session and not be locked out. Whereas with other things, such as, passwords for logging onto a local computer, sometimes there's a lockout for that, and you can only get 3 attempts maybe. There's also something called man in the middle, and this is what a lot of the hijacking attempts actually use as some form of this. So what happens with this is you're going to start off usually by sniffing some kind of traffic. Again, this is going to start off passive, but you want to pick up passwords, you want to pick up a session ID, something like that. And you usually don't want to disrupt the flow. Much of the time for this kind of an attack, the source computer, which is our original target, and the server that they're connecting to, neither one of them know that the man is in the middle. They don't know that the hacker is there intercepting and potentially modifying traffic as it goes back and forth. What you can do with this is you can add packets to an existing session, for example. I'm not going to admit that I have or have not done this. But if I was able to hack into somebody's Facebook account, okay, they may actually have an existing Facebook session open right now. In fact, I've got 3 open because of some security experiments that I was doing just today. I've got one open on my phone, on my laptop, and on this same computer that I'm recording on, over off on a different screen outside of your view. Anyway, I could update my status on any one of those. Well, by the same token, somebody could have a legitimate session as the user of a Facebook account, and they could be updating their status. But I may also have a legitimate session open to their Facebook account, and I could update their status. So their current status might be that they're happily married, and I might update their status to desperately single. And I might update their status and says, I'm looking for someone who loves long walks on the beach, dancing in the rain, and listening to Carpenter's music and Barry Manilow. So I might change all of that kind of stuff, while they're still legitimately connected and also making updates. You see, that's one of the advantages of a man in the middle, is that it can use an existing session. You can also modify the sequence numbers depending on the website you're connecting to keep the user connected and still be able to inject the packets. And this has to do with the fact that, remember, as you communicate over TCP, there's sequence numbers that get incremented, and it could result in the fact that the server or the client seeing an incrementation of the numbers that they did not expect to see, or the lack of an incrementation where they would expect to see the numbers increased, but the numbers are coming back the same, which would mean then that they probably needed to do a retransmit. That could cause a lot of traffic over the network that would be a little bit obvious and potentially unnecessary. Also, you can modify the payload of a packet that comes across. And I'm talking most of the time, by the way, about web kind of a hack that you can do when someone's connected to the internet. But these payloads, let's say that someone says they want to withdraw $10 out of their account or transfer $10 out of their account. But if you can modify that payload as it goes across the web, then maybe you'll change that to $1,000 or $10,000 or something like this. So you can sometimes modify that as well. Other types of hijacking you can run into would be something called session fixation. This is kind of interesting. This again would relate to websites that have not been designed with security in mind, but there's plenty of them out there. What happens with this is the attacker can determine a fixed session ID. And what you'll want to do with this is, maybe I want someone to go to a specific website, and this is their browser here. And up in the URL up here at the top, I want them to type in www. whatever, and I want a session ID of 567 in here somewhere, okay? So I determine a fixed session ID. This would be the case if the actual website that they're connecting to will accept kind of arbitrary session IDs. Now, if I can trick them into going to the website with the session ID that I specified, then I might be able to kind of piggyback on that existing connection and also be connected to the same session ID. Normally, this is going to take place through some kind of a spam email where it'll say, click here to check your bank balance, or you get the idea. We talked about that at length. But something that we can do in a phishing email to get them to click on a link that has the specific session ID that I have already planned out in advance. And once they click on that and they make that connection, then I can also put that same address in my web browser and I can change their numbers or whatever it is that they type in, for example. Or the other alternative here is after they've logged on, they don't get a new session ID. So maybe I'm able to intercept some traffic that they've got going to a specifically vulnerable website, and I know that after they log on, it doesn't increment anything. It doesn't change the session ID or anything like that. Then I just know that all I have to do is to paste in the same exact session ID into my browser, and I can also access the same website and the same information that they have. Of course, the key to this, again, is to get them into trick them into clicking on a fixed session ID, as I mentioned before. After that happens, again, now the attacker can have access to that victim's session because it's kind of a shared session at that point. Now, with session hijacking, one of the big advantages here is that you can access the server without authentication. Okay, that's the whole key. In fact, a lot of the things that I've been able to hack into, we make a big deal about being able to crack users' passwords and all this kind of stuff. A lot of the stuff I've hacked into, I've never learned the user's password, and I don't really care. In fact, if I want to, once I've hijacked it, I can change their password to whatever I want it to be, which is kind of a way to tip them off that they have been hacked, but at the same time, it's kind of fun. And this all, again, is possible because I'm able to piggyback on an existing session that they have and to kind of impersonate that session or to use a man-in-the-middle attack. This is also, again, is going to often be stealthy. The hacker the attackee, or the target, and the server that they're connecting to, neither party will really know that there's a man in the middle stealing data or involved in this whole transaction at all. The man in the middle will very often pass data back and forth to that server, even over secure connections. You can maintain the existing session, and you can also then reset the original client. That's another thing that you can do. And this means then that you have kind of stolen the user's existing session, but in order to prevent issues with maybe sequence numbers changes or some other complications you might run into, you can reset that original client's session. Very often it will then re-authenticate, and the user might just think, oh, that was kind of weird, that's just a little bit of a hiccup, and then they just continue on. Sometimes the resetting of the original client, when they re-authenticate, that takes place in the background. The user doesn't even know it. So that's another thing that can happen. We would then really have two concurrent sessions going on at once under the same user account. Also, the hijacking can be difficult to detect. Not in all cases, depending on what you're using to pick up the traffic. For example, if you're using ARP spoofs, that's a little bit noisy, a lot noisy. So that could be detected. But if you're using other methods here, people might not even know that you're in the middle of this, because the credentials that the user is using are legit. And there has not been kind of a brute force attack against their user's credentials. The account hasn't gotten locked out, anything like that. Also, on busy networks, something like this would be very much a needle in a haystack in terms of just looking at network traffic and identifying what might be a problem. That, again, though, would be where intrusion detection software comes up and where it can detect strange patterns in the network. Also, the nature of TCP-based sessions usually allows continuous access. Session-based communications would include things such as Telnet, FTP, and certain others, such that as long as that session is open, I can still make a connection even though the original user is also connected. And again, no re-authentication is necessary, and unless you're using SSL or certain other methods to secure everything, maybe, what else could you use? IPsec, some things like this. There's no packet security. The packet is bare. And so there's really no security issues relating to these things either. Now, let's talk about some common hijacking tools. I'm going to use a couple of these and just demonstrate them here. Actually, I think mostly I'm going to demonstrate one of them, but we have already demonstrated one of these in an earlier nugget because it kind of seemed like a good time to show it, but I showed you hamster ferret. Remember, that's where someone might do something like log into Facebook, and I'm doing a network capture. I can then reconstruct their cookie and use that existing cookie to reestablish that connection. Something that does a similar job to this is something called Firesheep, which has been out for, I guess, a few years now. And this is something that you can use with Firefox, at least the older version, I think version 3 dot something. And what will happen is it'll put a, I would show it to you, but I'm not using that particular version. But here's my Firefox web browser, you know, and here's where I type my address in and the URL at the top. And then over on the left-hand side of this, there's a pane, and it will show up, oh, there's a Facebook logon, there's a Hotmail logon, or whatever else. And what you do with Firesheep is, if you say, and it's intercepting this traffic promiscuously, it's seeing other users that are doing this. This is someone else's Facebook. If I like that, then I can click on that one, and then I can launch right into their Facebook logon right over here, and I can start to update their status. Now, the reason why I don't show Firesheep right now is because I use Firefox 5, and it's not really made for 5. It's made for only version 3. But Hamster Ferret, to me, works just as well. Also, there's something called EtherCap. And I think I've shown this to you in the past as well, but it's a great way to do things such as various man-in-the-middle attacks and so on. In fact, let me just show it to you real quick. Alright, so here I'm in my backtrack machine, and I just do EtherCap. You can do this from in a text basis, or you can do this with a UI. So I'm just going to do a UI here. And you can see here that I can then do a lot of different things with this. I can sniff my traffic on a specific Ethernet adapter, which you just saw there is the only one I have, Ethernet 0. And then I can go to the host, and I can scan for hosts, and it looks to see how many live hosts are on the network. I can then also do things such as go to View and Connections, and it should then show any live connections I have. I don't really have any right now. I can also go to Hosts and Host List. I clicked on it kind of fast. You might not have even seen it, but Hosts and Host List here. And I can see all the hosts that were live that were scanned for earlier. Remember, it scanned 15 hosts earlier. Anyway, to get to our hijacking item, here's the man-in-the-middle thing. Here, I can do things such as ARP poisoning, ICMP redirect, DHCP spoofing. That's kind of handy. Let me show you that one real quick. With this one, I can enter in the IP address pool that I want to issue IP addresses for, and the net mask, like 255.255.255.0, and let me just fill in this, maybe a 10.0.0. 0, something like that, and then the DNS server, whatever DNS server I want them to use. Now, why would I want to do something like this if I've already got a legitimate DHCP server around? Well, this kind of a man-in-the-middle attack, it will answer hopefully in advance of or before the actual legitimate DHCP server does, and now I've been able to give people the DNS server that I want them to use. Therefore, when they go to mybank.com or whatever their banking site is, it's actually going to take them to whatever fake mybank.com I've created for my website, and for which I've created a host record and an alias record in DNS. See? So now they're going to go to my DNS server and resolve to whatever I call their websites. Then you can also do start sniffing here, and what that'll do is it'll start looking for anything sensitive, such as POP3 passwords, telnet sessions, other things like that. But that gives you an idea there for EtherCap. And then I'm just going to quickly identify some others just for your information. There's Juggernaut, which is a little bit of an older tool, but potentially still effective. There's Hunt, which a lot of people like to use. T-Site, again, a lot of people like to use these two tools. Metasploit is still, man, it's the one that seems to have it all. You can do all kinds of hijacking with Metasploit, as well as many other exploits, which we've already explored in the past. And then there's SSL Strip. Now, what I'm going to do here is to demonstrate a couple of these things, and we'll see just how easy it is to potentially hack some of these things. Alright, now in this man-in-the-middle attack that I'm going to show you, I'm going to use a tool called SSL strip. What this does is it allows users to use a secure connection, so to speak, where in the browser it starts, HTTPS. Here, I'll show you. Let me just open something up here. So if I open up my little browser and I log on to a secure website. I'm trying to go to, for example, Facebook.com. Notice that I can go to an HTTPS here. By the way, Facebook actually accepts HTTP as well as HTTPS. Or certainly if I were to go to PayPal, something like this, then what we'll see also happen is it's going to take me automatically over to an HTTPS connection. And then I'm going to demonstrate this with Gmail. So when I go to Gmail, we see again HTTPS. Now, what I want to happen is when someone enters in their credentials, I want them to be able to get their email the way they always do. I don't want them to even know I'm around. Or if they notice anything, I want it to be just minor hiccups. And I think in this demonstration there'll be some minor hiccups. Some of the things I've seen other hackers do is they'll be able to use tools like SSL strip and everything seems to go quite smoothly, and some of the things I've seen them do. But I also think that they've kind of seeded things to deliberately disable certain security mechanisms and things to make their demos work a little bit better. What you're going to see here is there might be a little bit of a hiccup, but it really doesn't matter because I will still be able to get the information I want as the hacker. Okay, so what I've done here is I've created a Gmail account just for the purposes of this demo. And if we take a look at this, let's say I'm doing an ARP right here. ARP-A. This is key in order to be able to perform this hack. Notice that my default gateway is 10.10.10.1 and the physical address ends in 381C. Okay. What I want to do is I'm going to have to do an ARP spoof, which is going to trick this local host here, this is my victim machine, into thinking that 10.10.10.1 is actually at the MAC address of my Linux attacking computer. And what that will do is force all the traffic to go through my computer. I'll also do the reverse of that. I will trick the router into thinking that the client is at my MAC address as well, and then it will send all replies back through my host as well. So that's what we've got here for our MAC addresses. And we'll revisit this in a moment once I start my ARP spoof. The other thing I'll do here is I'm going to do a ping continuously, and you have to do a -T in Windows in order to make it go continuously. And I'm just going to do the 10.10.1, which is my default gateway, and I'm going to let that run for a little while we do some other things. Okay, where am I at here? Let's go back to our backtrack machine. Now, a few different things we can do. One, I want to do an ARP spoof -I Ethernet 0, that's interface for Ethernet 0, and then a -T, which means my target is 10.10.10.1, and then I want to fool that target into thinking that the MAC address is different for 10.10.10.55. Okay, .55 is my victim, .1 is my router, and I want all of their traffic to go to me. So now what I'm doing here is I'm telling them that the ARP address, the ARP is actually going to be, the MAC address is 61.D4. All right. Then I'm going to do pretty much the reverse of that over here on this other machine, or on this other tab. So it's going to be ARP spoof, and then the interface is Ethernet 0. Gosh, I can't type today. And then the target is 10.10.10.55, because remember we have to go both directions here. And then let's see, did I do that right? Yes. Okay, so that's all going right there. Now, when I go back over to my Windows machine, we're going to notice that pretty soon here. There it is. We're starting to get requests timed out. I mean, everything seemed to be going fine before. Why isn't it going now? Because I've given it a fake MAC address, and it's sending all the packets back and forth through my own Linux attack backtrack machine right here. But I'm not routing those packets. In order to do that, I need to put the number 1 into this file. So I'm going to echo 1 into, that's what the greater symbol is there for, this particular file for IP forwarding. And once I do that, we should see packets start to be successful again over here on this machine. Now this is successfully confirmed to me, and I'm going to Control-C this to kill it. This confirms to me now that I've been able to spoof this ARP address. In fact, I'm going to stay in this window and clear it, and then I'll do an ARP again. Now you see what's happened here? 10.10.10.1 now is at my Linux attack backtrack machine, not the actual legitimate router MAC address. Now the other thing I want to do here is back in my attacking machine at Backtrack, I'm going to use an IP tables entry, and what this is going to do is it's going to specify their destination port 80 is going to redirect to port 10,000. And why am I choosing port 10,000? Because that's the default port, and you can change it if you want to, but that's the default port for SSL strip. So I'm going to press enter. Ooh, I must have typed something in wrong here. Let me take a look. Oh, I put a hyphen in TCP, and I'm not supposed to do that. So let me back up a little bit here. Alright, now let's try it. Okay, looks like everything's good. So I got this going, and then the other thing I need to do is to use SSL strip, and it's on the applications and Backtrack menu if you want to use that, or you can just go to this path here if you're using Backtrack. But what it's going to do is I'm going to use Python because it's actually a Python script. And I wanted to send it out or write it to, that's what W is for, write it to SSL log, or you can call this log whatever you want to call it. But I'll go ahead and press enter here. And now I've got SSL strip running, and let's see what happens. Okay, so over here on my Windows machine, I'm going to, and by the way, this could be almost any version of Windows. I'm using Windows Vista, which is fairly current, but this weakness, again, is not related to patch level, operating system really, and it's not really a weakness of Gmail, PayPal, your online banking, any of those folks. They're really doing a pretty good job of whatever they're capable of doing to secure things. However, this is an inherent weakness in the way that TCP works that we can exploit. And what I'm going to do here is go to gmail.com, and as I go here, notice that, hey, wait a minute, I thought that was supposed to be HTTPS. And you see, that's where you cue the maniacal laughter. That's because I have been able to successfully use SSL strip, and what this does is anything that the client types in is going to be sent in the clear. Their username and password will be sent in the clear to the attacking machine, the Backtrack computer. I will intercept that traffic in a log, and I'll be able to then call out of that their username and password. And then I'm going to send this on just so that I'm not rude. I don't want to interrupt this person's email, and all that kind of stuff. I'm polite about it. I'm going to go ahead and send this on to Gmail, but guess what? Over from the Backtrack computer to Gmail, it's going to go across as HTTPS traffic. Truly a man-in-the-middle attack here. So now I've typed in my username and password, and I'm going to log in. I don't really care if it remembers the password or not. And this is right where I was telling you about. Sometimes there's a little hiccup in this. I've noticed that with some of these hackers' tools, they will go through smoothly. And in fact, I've seen other hackers do this. Maybe I'm just not as good as them. They will do this whole thing here, and it will immediately go through to their website, and we'd be reading email now. What did it do to me? Well, it kicked me back out here. It didn't say bad password, but that's probably what the user will assume, so we'll try it again. So let's try signing in again. And it didn't seem to take. But I'll tell you by experience that if I do this 2 or 3 times, then it eventually, for some reason, switches back over to HTTPS, and the user continues on as usual. But anyway, there we go. Now we're in, and all that's fine. So you're reading email. We're doing all the stuff that we normally do. Now let's go back over to our SSL strip and all of this stuff. What I'm going to do is Control-C to kill this right now, and I'm going to do a gedit. And I'm going to look for that file that I created, SSL, what did I call this? SSL log, I think. Okay. Now when I open this up, even though word wrap is turned on, you still have to scroll off to the side to see some of this. You can see the several attempts that I had for logging on here. But what was the username? Okay, it was certifiedhack7@gmail.com. And if I keep going off to the left here, I'm going to just press the end key on my keyboard. We see that the password was, oh thank goodness, I chose a long, complicated, alphanumeric, upper lowercase password here that nobody could ever possibly guess. You can see that it's kind of some form of the word hat trick, like a soccer thing, I guess. Hat trick. And so there it is. And all I have to do is to place myself as a man in the middle between some server and my intended victim, and I can scoop up their passwords quite easily. And then I just wanted to quickly jump to something else here, offline here. I went ahead and did the same hack, but this time I've also run ettercap. And what we'll do here is you can see now that it's also capturing the credentials here. If I can scroll off to the side here, I may have to maximize this. We can see the username is certifiedhack7@gmail, and the pass is, again, hat trick. So by using ettercap here, we're able to pick this up, and I'll show you the command that I used. I use this right here, ettercap -T, which is text mode, Q for quiet, so it doesn't show you every packet, only the ones that are interesting. And then the interface was Ethernet 0, but of course you'll change that to whatever your interface is. Alright folks, if you want to be done, or if you want to take a break, or just move on to the next video, now is actually a decent time to do that, but I was going to conclude recording here when Bird, yeah, you remember Bird, he was just sitting up on my monitor giving me this judgmental look, saying, James, why don't you just show these people one more hack, for crying out loud? And I kind of felt guilted into it, so I'm going to show you one more hack, okay? So this is what we're going to do. This is a hack that is just for fun. You don't have to know this for exam purposes, but I think you'll find it interesting. This does actually use hijacking, but it's DLL hijacking that's not really specifically mentioned in the exam objectives. So what I'm going to do is to use Metasploit for this, and it's part of Backtrack, Exploitation Tools, and then where am I going here? I lost myself. Oh, it's right there. Metasploit Framework, and then the MSF console. So once I get this cracked open here, what we want to do is to pretty much set up a web page for the users to click on, and we could send them a phishing email or do some other method to kind of trick them into clicking on this link, or they could access this not only through a web browser, that's one of the ways of getting this hack, or they can also just do it through SMB. I might send them an email saying, hey, here's some shares here's a share that's been sent out to you so that you can start on your next work project. And if they click on the URL, which would be just like whack whack server whack share, then they'll see some files in there that Metasploit puts there, and one thing they won't see is a DLL. Now, what's the point of the DLL? You see, there's certain file associations with those files, and some files, you know, like text files or whatnot, you double click on it, and what's it do? It automatically opens it up in Notepad. Well, there's a certain file there, we'll just use the Windows address book, that if they were to double click on it, it actually requires a specific DLL that Metasploit is going to substitute. That's where the hijacking takes place. Because normally Windows will use a DLL that it needs from the same directory that it's currently in, if possible. And if it doesn't find a DLL there that it needs, then that's when it goes to Windows, System32, and so forth. So that's the whole kind of nature of this exploit. We're going to substitute a different DLL than the one Windows thinks it's going to get. Alright, so what I've done here for expediency's sake is I did once I went into the console here, I typed search webdav, and this is showing me any webdav exploit, and then I just copied and pasted in this item right here, which appears, I can't see the forest for the tree, there it is. This one right here is copied that into my clipboard and pasted it in as a use exploit, and then I decided to show the options. Here are the various options that you can specify. Some of them say you should not change them, such as the URI or the default port to listen to, so don't change those items. But I set the payload to the Meterpreter reverse TCP. The Meterpreter is what gives me a lot of additional flexibility in my exploit there. I'm going to set the base name to contact. That means that they're going to see a bunch of files there that start with the word contact and that have extensions of these types, a text file, a Windows address book file, and some others. Then I set the local host being this local computer that I'm hacking from, because we want the client to connect to this. We're going to solicit them to trick them into clicking on a link or something, or sending them an email telling them to go to a share that I have created. And this is the server host that's serving up the content. The local port we're using is 777, but you can change that to whatever you want to. And then I just ran the exploit. And now, if they type this into their into the browser of their, like Windows Explorer or something like that, they should be able to access these files that I've created. And so now then over here on my Windows 7 computer, you can see I've gone to the 10.10.10.45. If I double click on it, we'll see that we have then these documents here. And there they are. Here's a text document which just says hello. Okay, we see all kinds of different other things. We see a contact card, a vCard file, a Windows address book. I don't think I have anything that would even open that up. But anyway, I've got all this different stuff going on. But just by double clicking on these things, like this address book file, what has happened here? I might look at this stuff and say, I don't know what this person was sending me. I'm just going to close out of this. Doesn't matter. The damage has been done, folks. Why? Because back over on my attacking machine, look, a Meterpreter session has now been opened. What I'll do with this now is I have to create a session. So I'll type in session -I and then 1. And this now opens up the session for me. Or does it? I typed the wrong thing in. It's got to be sessions. So anyway, let me go back down here. I just realized I typoed everything. So, sessions, and then it's -I and then 1. Okay, now we got it. Okay, so now we got a session going on here. And if I want to see the different things that I can work with, I just type the word help, and this tells me all the different things that I can do here. Okay, so there's quite a bit of different things I could do. I could kill processes. I could list the running processes. I could reboot the remote computer. You see, Meterpreter is quite powerful here. I can get the IP config item. I can look at the routing table. There's just so much stuff here. I mean, you can see it goes on and on and on up here, up towards the top. Let's just do a couple of simple ones though. Let's just do a get the user ID. Let's see who I'm logged in as. Okay, right now I'm logged in as the administrator, but guess what? That might not be powerful enough for me. I might want to log on as the system or get system privileges. Easy enough. Get system. There you go. Now I'm logged in as system, or rather have system privileges, and if I do a get UID again, now you can see I'm logged in with the full authority of the system. What if I wanted to crack some passwords? I could do this. You can see it right up here, hash dump. So hash dump. There's all the hashes. Also, if they'd changed the name of the administrator account to something else, then remember our earlier clue that we looked at in previous nuggets, anything that ends in 500 is the administrator account. So even though that might be named, Clarice or something like that, I know that that would be the actual account. Also, if I wanted to just know what operating system was running over there, or, something like that, I think it's sysinfo. Yeah, okay, so it tells me the name of the computer and some other pertinent information there. Now, let me scroll back up here again. Let's look at some other things you could do over there. I could record the mic. So if there's a microphone attached to that computer, I can actually listen to what's going on over there. A great way to spy on the meeting that's taking place in the boss's office. I could look at the webcam, or list the webcams anyway, or take a snapshot from a webcam if they have one of those running. You could take a screenshot. Let's just do that one. Screenshot. Okay, and I could see what it is that they're looking at. This is what their interface looks like right now. Okay, and it saved the screenshot. This is actually part of Linux here. Okay, and there it is. Okay, that's just a screenshot of it. So anyway, it took a screenshot of whatever it was that they were doing over there. So pretty powerful tool and kind of scary in a certain way, isn't it? Okay, let me get out of this thing and go back to my terminal. Oops, wrong one. Right there. Okay. And then scrolling back up here, this is so scary, I just got to keep going on. Clear events. You could clear the event log, people. Wow. Actually, I haven't even tried that one quite yet. I do some other tools for clearing event logs. Let's just go ahead and check this one out. I just got to double check on it. It just looks like it's way too powerful. That can't possibly work. How could you possibly clear out like the system event log or the security event log? It doesn't seem like it's even possible. Let's try it. Okay, so I'm going to go back over here to my Linux box. And what was the event? Clear EV. Okay, clear EV. This may not work. I've never tried it before. Says something failed, so it may not have worked. But anyway, you get the idea. At least it gives you some interesting possibilities here, right? So if I go over to this, oops, it's kind of giving me an hourglass now. So let me end that. In fact, it may have failed because I had this open at the time that happened. So it's getting kind of sloppy here, folks, I know. But hey, this is all free content anyway. This was not part of the main course. I told you could go away if you wanted to, and you didn't. Here you are. So, it's your own fault. Anyway, looks like we're not seeing much with security there, although I am getting an hourglass. Oh, it looks empty, actually. Especially going down to system here. Well, yeah, okay, it cleared them all out. I think it didn't kill the security one because I was parked on that particular one at the time. So maybe that was a problem there. Let's just try it again real quick here. Clear event log. It still says operation failed. That may not work, but I do know that it did at least clear out the system event log. So if we go back to that, okay, it didn't clear out security, but it did clear out system. So anyway, you get the idea. There's still some pretty powerful things that we can do. In this nugget, we took a look at hijacking. We started off with a hijacking overview. This is where we took a look at whether or not the hacker is completely involved or immersed in a hijacking attempt, whether they're just watching passively or whether they're actively involved, or a hybrid attack. We also took a look at several of the hijacking types, such as a brute force or man-in-the-middle kind of a hijack. Session hijacking is often very successful, and with this kind of a hijack, you can take a look at a session that's ongoing and insert yourself into that session and kind of take it over. We also took a look at common hijacking tools, as well as concluding here with a demo, or actually two demos in this case. Well, Mr. Bird here hopes that this has been informative for you, and he'd like to thank you for viewing.